Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Carlos Pereira and Jill Jones. Carlos is the head of governance and policy at Meta, and Jill is a director of IT security governance at Meta as well. So, Jill, Carlos, thank you for joining us today for our Risk Management Show episode interview today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, yes. So I think we'll have a great opportunity to understand the topic of why governance is a business enabler, and also some other topics like governance for the masses, and does the G in governance, risk and compliance deserve its attention. But before that, could you perhaps introduce yourself to our audience? Short story about your career path, what brought you to where you are right now. So Jill, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. We're really happy to be here. So I actually started many years ago in federal law enforcement here in the United States. Following law school, I pursued a career as a special agent with the U.S. Secret Service. For about 11 years, I finished up with then Vice President Joe Biden, and then transitioned to begin my career back then at Facebook, now Meta, where I ran the executive protection program for many years. So after about 17 years of doing highly operational security, I was thinking of my next move, and I was actually very interested in this governance and policy space. I just saw a lot of opportunity. I came to Facebook at a time where it was very fast growing. And I saw a lot of opportunity for alignment. And at the time, I also saw a lot of movement in this governance space for the company, which was a little bit new at the time, how we integrated governance and policy into the everyday workings of the company. And I was really intrigued by that. So I came down the governance path a few years ago, and I've had the pleasure of working with Carlos for the past several years, who's such a true SME in this space. And I've just become a really passionate advocate, especially having come from a heavy operational security background, a really strong advocate for how the principles of governance, risk, and compliance can just make everybody safer.
Fantastic. Carlos, please introduce yourself to our audience.
How can I top that? I can't. So I'll just be a lot more succinct because I'm not as eloquent or as polished as Jill is. Carlos Pereira, head of governance and policy within the global security organization Meta. I'm thrilled to be here and be able to showcase a little bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly that my experience, 25 plus years in the GRC space, will be able to bear. Prior to joining Meta almost 5 years ago, I was with another little company called PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I had the opportunity to lead a lot of multinational engagements on a global scale around implementing GRC components, such as committee structure and everything, for very large clients, including a lot of the top 5 financial institutions in the world. So thrilled to be here and thrilled to start our conversation.
Absolutely, and we had a previous interview with Carlos with our other guest host, AJ. She had an interview with you about I think in December last year, right?
Yeah, it's been some time. I got to tell you, since COVID, everything is a blur. It's like B, C, or after C, So yes, it was sometime in the past. That's right. So.
All right. So that's why I think it was a very kind of vivid interview. So we had got the first explanation how governance works at Meta, and I think it was useful for us to maybe to bring this again to our audience with another angle. So perhaps, Carlos, can you briefly explain what governance means in the context of business and how it relates to compliance? Because I know some people may say, because governance, it's too bad, it's too regulated, and maybe it's anti-business, and probably in California they can say it with much higher now than it was before.
Yeah, no, thank you. Look, governance means a lot of things to a lot of different people. Everyone has their own version of what governance is. It's similar like other concepts of risk management, compliance, and everything. As you know, a lot of the components of governance is to ensure that organizations have adequate roles and responsibilities defined, that people know what their role they play for an organization. That's one of the foundational elements of a good governance program. Another one would be around documentation, namely policies, procedures, and everything, to make sure that we have the right level of documentation to support the organization's objectives and goals that they have, you know. And the last but not least, and they're all interconnected, is around decision making. You know, how do we have the right decision bodies making the right decisions for the company? How do we ensure that that is properly communicated, enforced, and that the teams have a clear understanding what the expectations of the leadership? So, Jill, curious about your thoughts, you know, as well on you know, governance as a business enabler. So.
Sure. I mean, plus one to everything you said, but you know, in addition, what we see across highly complex global teams working in a fast-moving environment that face a lot of risk in their space, it just simply lays out some ground rules of the road so that you have a team operating in Dubai, working off of the same set of rules and responsibilities and understanding as a team here in California. And that promotes efficiency, but it also reduces risk. And frankly, you know, from a people development perspective, I think it just also gives people a sense of that they're doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. And you know, why I think sort of the team and the expertise we have in our governance space right now works so well is we have people who really have some of that operational experience. They can put themselves in the shoes of the business person who might be facing the pressure because there's a change in policy or a change in a governance structure that they think might add some friction into their process. But we have a deep understanding of that, and we can really walk them through of how we're setting up frameworks, RACIs, rules and regulations that actually are going to make their job easier over time and reduce risk, so they don't go down the path of executing a project only to find out that they've done something to either, you know, put their work or the company at peril. So I think that is a huge help to the business, that you're just setting a standard so everybody knows that what they're doing is the right thing at the right time. And it ultimately makes things move faster.
So my question, okay, you for Carlos. So how does good governance help a company achieve its business objective? You said you have kind of three sector for governance to the masses, and how you explain what is a G in governance. Can you please kind of elaborate on this three sector?
Yeah, so everyone has a boss, and every organization has specific goals and objectives that typically come either from the board of directors or senior leadership of the company. Where we organizations struggle is to be able to have the right governance, and how do we ensure that the teams that they are supporting those goals and objectives have a clear understanding of the impacts it has for their space, you know? So one of the many goals that a company such as Meta has is to be able to provide a voice to everyone. You know, we don't want technology only to be available to the affluent Western societies, to be available to everyone. What does that mean for global security or any other organization? It's important to understand how we would be able to support that. And the different kinds of projects, initiatives, and activities that we need to do to make sure that at our level, our teams and at the individual level are in line with what the expected outcomes is from the leadership. So having a clear understanding of, again, a clear understanding of goals and objectives at the corporate level, but then how the team's goals and objectives need to support those higher goals and objectives, and how you would be able to, on an individual level, have your own goals and objectives to support those. So it becomes almost like a pyramid. You have very high level goals and objectives down to the individual level. Joe, curious if you see otherwise or anything else you want to complement that?
No, absolutely. Yes. Again, it gives people that common operating picture, and that you know what you are striving to achieve every day is ultimately going to support the business and be a business enabler. Because, you know, I think sometimes, again, when we think of organizations like a security organization in a large company, often that comes with a little bit of baggage with the assumption that we're putting in rules that might be a blocker to business. when, the reality is we're very in tune with what the business objectives are, and we're putting systems in place that will actually enable that, but do so in a way that keeps our people and assets and buildings safe in the long run. And I think we've gotten a really good balance based on some of the governance frameworks we've set up and the effort that we put into understanding the why behind everything we do, and using these frameworks to reprioritize our own projects and our own priorities to ensure that they do support the business, which is changing frequently.
Yeah. And Jill, I would just like to compliment to that just for a second, around the frameworks. So there's a variety of different frameworks. There's more prescriptive frameworks out there, such as ISO, COVID, NIST, and the like, but a lot of that is very high level, sometimes aspirational type of frameworks that they are really beneficial for you to be able to manage and monitor your performance and benchmark against how other organizations are doing. You can even obtain certification and everything. But the day-to-day operations, let's talk about decision making. How do you create committees? How do you create working groups? What's the composition of those? The framework that the governance team is able to provide for the organization needs to be very customizable to the audience and to the problem at hand. The same type of structure framework may not work for a high-tech company such as Meta, than it would work for a small bank or a regional, food processing company or something. But the decisions, that need to be made and how you're going to structure the decision making, the communication, the enforcement, and the like needs to take place. We're just going to have a different approach to it, and in terms of level of complexity and how that would be deployed. So hopefully that exemplifies how we would support that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder what are some of the key metrics that companies can use to measure the effectiveness of this governance frameworks you mentioned.
Look, one of the most widely used is losses. All the companies have awareness and around the bottom line and how they keep track of lawsuits and losses and events and incidents that they expose. A good governance program is not going to 100% eliminate all of those events, all of those situations, but it's going to be able to provide a mechanism to be able to address and minimize the impact. So, Jill, I'm curious about your thoughts on that. So.
Right. That's a great metric, but then that helps us align behind priorities, right? So if we can identify and have a framework in which not just the people supporting the business, but the business itself, we're all aligned on what assets, we want to protect, our people obviously being the biggest one, but any other thing that is going to fall within, what's important to your business. And then go from there, right? What we always say is that sometimes we see people overthinking governance or over-engineering it, when really it's just a way for you and your business to align on your priorities and make sure that you're putting the most effort toward, your biggest assets, your biggest priorities. And there are some that, as we walk people through different frameworks, Carlos is always famous for saying, hey, you don't always want to be a 5 on a CMMI score. That may not be your goal, because whatever efforts you're putting in might not actually be aligned to the business's biggest priority. But it's really just a way to organize and collectively get everybody to agree, behind the priorities. And sometimes we find people over-engineering that.
Yeah, Jill, you are also IT security governance, right? Or you have a IT security role?
No,
right?
so no, I'm not IT security. No.
No, let me see what you mentioned. IT security. No, not IT security. You have director of IT security governance. No.
Sorry. No. Somebody much smarter than me somewhere is director of IT security.
I took it from my LinkedIn. Probably I made a mistake. But I wanted to know, maybe you have some idea. What roles does technology play in supporting good governance, and what are some of the emergent trends in this area? Of course, we all know about automation and ChatGPT. Of course, Meta also provided now your own kind of AI framework. So what is your opinion on technology play in this?
Sure. Well, while I'm not the IT director for sure, listen, even if you're not working in a technology company right now, you're remiss to not really have a good understanding of how technology influences and impacts your work on a daily basis. Obviously, even within the Global Security Organization, we work hand in hand with a systems and technology group that is constantly evaluating, do we have the right technology in place to enable us to do our job as efficiently as we can to support the business. And of course, we have, technical components throughout the company, constantly looking at that as well. So, we not only are we looking at it in terms of from a governance framework for efficiency, business enablement, but also, are we doing the right thing with technology? And, data and user privacy is core to everything we do here. So there's a very heavy compliance piece whenever we're looking at a technology. That's where our processes and frameworks are so critical, and the right partnerships in place are so critical, because it could be the newest, shiniest technology off the shelf, but if it's not going to achieve or support a business priority and or expose us to any risks in any way, then we need to reevaluate whether it's the right thing. And Carlos, I know you work quite closely with some of our partners in that space as well, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, look, I think this is a very exciting time in our professional and personal lives, to be able to see that the rolling out of new technologies that, even 3-5 years ago were unheard of, right? The speed of delivery associated with introduction of new technologies is getting faster and more efficient than ever before. That presents opportunities with challenges. Challenges in terms of, for instance, regulation. What does that look like in the metaverse, in all of this new uncharted territory of AI and bots and machine learning and artificial intelligence, all virtual reality and the like. So regulation will play a key role in being able to understand where are the parameters. And right now it's a bit of a free-for-all. There's not necessarily a common platform. There's no standards in the industry. Everyone is creating a bunch of content and technology that in due time, the lawmakers or regulators are going to have to figure out how to corral the troops, The other aspect that I like to salient is the fact that a lot of this technology will have tremendous impacts on our day-to-day. I'm keen to have a great understanding on how AI is helping companies be able to automate a lot of the tasks and activities, and that will continue to do so. The long term, from a governance perspective, what does that look like in the integration of the day-to-day activities that a company has? How does AI support the individual contributor at a company to perform their job? How can we ensure that the technology being deployed are available and usefully correct for across the organization? So that's just some of my thoughts around how Meta and Metaverse is leading a lot of these discussions, and AI is clearly one of the paths forward. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Jill, I have a question, because now we are, of course, we're operating in the teams. We have a legal, finance, operations. So how compliance teams work with other parts of the organizations, and like I mentioned, to ensure that governance is embedded through all this company and not just nice plate on the door of your department.
Sure, that's so critical. So I think first of all, everything starts with relationships, right? And as Carlos and I have had a seat to see how the company grows, it really is just looking across the landscape and saying, hey, what policies, regulations or standards we're putting in place, who are the partners that are going to inform how we build these? So, for example, if we think about the fact that we, as a security organization, own all the access management policies to our facilities, well, legal and HR and a lot of business partners have input into how that's developed. So, it starts with relationship building, but then as Carlos said earlier, it really comes back to the frameworks and what sort of committee and decision-making structure are you going to set up throughout your organization, and embedding continuous feedback in that. I think if anything, COVID has taught us that maybe the policies, governance frameworks, or approach for an organization that worked in 2018 and 2019 are very different as the landscape and how we work has changed in 2023. But it's really having that deep understanding again of the business, who your critical partners are, setting up that framework that's going to help you make the best decision for the company, and then having that feedback loop and just really being willing to change, having that mindset to constantly, or at least on an annual basis, reanalyze your approach to policies and governance. Carlos, anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Jill. Plus one on that. And look, over the years, the risk and the compliance function have had a lot of the limelight, meaning a lot of resources and focus and recognition has been placed on that. And unfortunately, I call it the little g. The little governance team, in many regards, is only responsible for setting up the board of directors committee or the high level committees for the organization. But I think there's an opportunity to embed the governance function as an organization in the decision-making across the entire org, in the entire company. Because at the end of the day, if you can have the most robust risk tools and risk department with all the fancy capabilities and everything, you might have the best compliance team that can tell you back and forth what regulations they're subject to, how they're in compliance and everything. But if you lack the governance structure around how all of the different parts are operating, actually you will be reminiscent and potentially could be subject to fines, lawsuits, and additional scrutiny from the regulators. So the little g deserves a little bit of limelight on how do you bring this together? So it's a little maestro. So.
All right, interesting. So looking ahead, what do you see as the biggest trends and the challenges in the field of governance and compliance? And how do you think companies can best prepare for these trends? Jill, please go ahead.
Sure. I think it's a little bit of what Carlos touched on earlier, is what will the regulatory and compliance landscape look like in the future as we have more and more technologies coming online. And I'm not just talking about meta technologies, but just sort of writ large in the industry. Obviously, chat, GPT is the big talk right now, but AI, the metaverse, what influence will that have on how we work in the future, and what regulations will be coming down the line? I think we've had some signal, but we're really not sure where that's going to end up from a regulation perspective. So just having really good compliance personnel and a pulse on that. But what we've seen, I think, how the world works and how large organizations work together across what is now a much more distributed workforce, global workforce, people kind of being encouraged to work from anywhere at any time. I'm actually really excited about what that means for governance, because I think it showcases how important a really good organized structure to align behind how companies make decisions and support their business units. I think that's more critical than ever in this more global model, which is very exciting to see how it's revolutionized how we work. But I think it highlights truly the importance of governance for any, an organization of 50 people to an organization of 50,000 people.
I can complement your answer. Thanks, Jill. I think one of the biggest challenges that I see happening is the influence that up to now was not really felt by companies around, from a governance perspective, around social and environmental issues. So up to now, the companies were, by and large, unaffected by their positions or their activities in that space. And from a governance perspective, you'll see a lot more activists and shareholders and stakeholders require the companies to do a lot more, not just from the reporting, but actually have a more active participation in solving a lot of the climate issues and social injustices that the world experiences. And so from a governance perspective, you will see a lot more active participation from investors in demanding companies to be a little more prescriptive on how they're addressing those things. You can only just sit on the sidelines and you see where the wind blows. You need to have a position and stick to it. So.
All right. So we have time for one last question. So perhaps for each of you, if we summarize our interview for someone who is listening, would like to take to walk away with one or two major takeaways, what would that be for your perspective? Please, Jill, go ahead first.
Sure. Understand the why behind your business. Again, this is true for whatever business you're in. What is the driving force behind your business? What are the goals of the business at large? And I think from there, you back into how do you best support it. And again, don't overthink governance. It's as simple as one foot in front of the other. Is there a framework and a way to organize that your entire company can get behind? In order to work more efficiently and make decisions faster together. That would be my takeaway. Carlos?
Yeah, thank you. Jill, I would just supplement that answer with be open to think of different ways to get the work done. The way we used to work in the past 5-10 years ago is for sure very different than what it is today. And it's going to be different tomorrow. Be open to change and embrace that change. And from a governance perspective, it'll be paramount to ensure the success.
All right, fantastic, guys. Thank you for this very informative interview, and wish you success with your further career, and of course, success to Meta. And of course, we know everyone, and everyone knows Meta and from Facebook, and we all kind of see what happens in your working place that reflects in our daily life. So thanks again, and hope we will cooperate with future interviews with our audience about risk and governance issues.
Thank you very much, Boris.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely.